Hey everybody, Craig Garrity here. Welcome to Car People. Today, our guest is Lauren Fix. She's a journalist, car expert. She is the real-life Mona Lisa Vito. Ladies and gentlemen, Lauren Fix. Let's get to it. Very excited to have you on, Lauren. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I love talking cars.
And I wanted to start out first by saying that you are the 2009 inductee to the National Women and Transportation Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I meant to say that
Thanks.
to start things off. Whenever somebody's a Hall of Famer, that's usually a big deal, and I know that is.
Thank you.
So how do you get started from? Because you started really, really young. It's in your blood technically, right? So can you start us with that?
Sure. My father worked for the big three automakers. I was born in Dearborn, Michigan. And so when he's working for each company, Ford, GM, Chrysler at the time, that's all there was, he would get a vehicle. So when he started working at Ford, he bought a Thunderbird. When he worked at GM, he bought himself a 67 Corvette. And then he went to Chrysler and he bought a 70 Barracuda, which was my mother's car. So there was always something in the garage that needed some form of maintenance. And, I'd go out and say, my dad worked long hours. So he worked as an engineer. He was an engineer, professional engineer in 3 states. And so when he came in the garage, I would go, "What are you doing?" Changing the brakes or replacing a clutch. And I'd be like, "Okay, what is that?" And he would stop and take out paper and explain to me how it worked. As a kid and you're 10 years old, that's like pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then he would say, "Do you want to help?" And I'm like, "Sure." I mean, I could have said no, I got other things to do, but I said, "Sure."
That's a great way to learn too, because you're indoctrinated it from such a young age. Nothing was foreign to you about the idea of whether it be the parts of the car or the tools that you were using. This was just a language you started speaking at a very early age. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah, it just was my thing. You know what I mean? My father loved cars, and that was my connection with him because otherwise he was always working.
Did I read that you were racing cars around the age of 10? Or is that too early?
I started racing cars at 16.
At 16. Okay.
My son started at the age of 6, and my daughter at the age of 8.
Well,
And I taught my
technically,
husband how to race.
and I know you've told this many times, your son started before the age of 6, I think, right?
Yes, I raced while I was pregnant with my son. It was funny because here we are, racing. It's 1993. He was born December 93, and I was racing Labor Day weekend, September 1993. And they said, "Hey, I was racing a Cobra. It was a vintage group. It wasn't like, this is not a crash fest. These are very expensive cars,
Yeah.
and everyone runs together, and it's still competitive, but certainly not, the level where people are hurting each other or their vehicles." So it was funny. I was out there, and ESPN was new, ESPN2 called The Deuce at the time. And they came by, and I'm always like a little media hawk. I go, "Oh, this camera crew, want to see if I can get on." They said, "Oh, that's cool. Woman racing a Cobra, like it was no big deal." But there weren't any others that have ever raced Cobras that I'm aware of. And so then they came by to talk to me, and they said, "Hey, this is all right." And I go, "And I'm pregnant." "What?" So flags went up. They're like, "Get the camera crew." They interviewed me, and they did a ton of interviewing. But unfortunately, in the end, I only got like the end of the show because ESPN2 was more about, they had Ralph Lauren there and a lot of super expensive Ferraris. So at the end of the show, and I found the original footage just recently, it says, "Lauren Fix will write no new chapter in racing. Her 63 Cobra died at the end of the front straight on the last lap." And they come over with a microphone. And I said the car was kicking and bucking. So I knew the fuel pump had died. And he says, and this is David Hobbs, a famous racer, said, "Was it the car or was it the baby?" So I got a little bit of plug there, but at least my son loves it. I've got tons of footage. I've done a VinWiki story on it, and it's great because that's really what we're all about, cars.
Yeah.
So hopefully, our daughter's name is Shelby, so I do have a problem. Yeah.
There you go. Now, did you teach your kids the way that you learned? Was it just something you said, "Oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be doing this"? Because I know your husband's an engineer as well, right? So,
Yes.
Was it sort of the way that you just assimilated into it with your dad, or were you thinking, did they just kind of gravitate to it as well?
Well, we used to take them to the races. I have a picture of my daughter at 4 months old with those big earmuffs on, to muffle out the sound at Shannonville Raceway in Canada. and my husband was racing, and I was still, they wouldn't even let me in the car at that point. I still had the baby with me, so I put her on my lap. I have a picture of her. So she's now 30 and she's pregnant with a little girl. I go, oh, this could be fun.
That's awesome. So, the show is called Car People. What is it? What do you think defines or classifies someone as a car person?
Okay, well, if you're using a vanilla colored, brown colored Camry and you're driving from point A to point B, you're not a car person.
Okay.
A car person is someone who's like, from the Church of the High Lift Cam, may there be more horsepower for everybody. That means I want power, I want performance, I want handling. And that can be accomplished in a lot of different vehicles, doing a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be racing. So when you go to a car show or a cruise night, that's where a bunch of people bring their cars on an evening, you come and go as you want, or a cars and coffee event. When you show up and you've got whatever it is you drive, doesn't make a difference. And there's someone parked next to you. Maybe they have a Ferrari. Maybe they don't. Maybe they have a Civic Type R. You start talking cars with them, it's a family. And you don't get that in any other industry. Believe me, I've worked in a lot of industries. And this is the only industry where people say, oh, cool. What's your name? Nice to meet you. And suddenly you're friends. You don't know if that person's a millionaire or they barely can afford to put food on the table, but they're putting cool parts on their car. You're instantly part of the family. And that's a car person who just understands the passion, the freedom of driving a vehicle. Once you get into that and you love it, you got a manual transmission and a Mini Cooper or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You're a car person.
Yeah, it's a camaraderie. There's a real camaraderie there. And I know it might sound funny to say it's not competitive because there are actual competitive races, but it's more sort of like, a genuine mutual respect and, interest in each other's gear and, the way that somebody keeps their vehicle up or what they have their eye on next, right? Because you get something that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I got this. And then after a little while, you start looking for the next one, that next thing.
Exactly.
You mentioned
sometimes the people are happy. It's the car of their dreams. I have friends that it's their car of their dreams, and it's like, it's an okay car to me, but it's their passion. It's something, what the passion really comes from is what you saw in high school. When you were in high school and you saw a car go by and you roar and you looked, that's the car that you go, oh, I'd love to have a 240Z or a Camaro or whatever. It doesn't even have to be a pickup truck, but it's a vehicle that you have passion about, and that passion transcends to other people. I'm a member of this exotic car group, and I have no idea what these people do for a living. I know them by their cars. Sometimes I don't even know their names, but instantly we all become friends. We're hugging, shaking hands, hey, what'd you bring? Oh, that's really cool. And it becomes a family that you would not believe, because when one person's in need, everybody comes together for them, and you don't get that in any other business.
Yeah. And we were saying, joking around before we actually started recording, that you are the legitimate, real deal Mona Lisa Vito from My Cousin Vinny. I don't know if she was based off of you, but your knowledge is beyond extensive. So I would imagine the folks that you pal around with at some of these events are just looking at you and thinking, "Oh my God, she's like, you're a legit legend around these folks."
I guess I don't think of it that way. I just kind of do what I do, and I've been racing cars since 1980. I've been involved in the auto industry. I designed and developed braking systems. I was Oprah's automotive expert. So, I've done a lot of cool things that can't be redone again. But I never think of it as like a legend. But I always have my eye on the ball on what the next thing is. Like you're talking about with cars in this industry, being a woman in this business, you have to be strong, and you can't say, oh, I'm an emotional nightmare. You'll never make it. Just don't even bother.
Yeah.
Because I've seen women try to compete in my expertise in doing television, and they get offended or whatever. Listen, you got to have thick skin. My father always told me, if you want to be in this business, you have to be an M&M. You can be hard on the outside. You can be as soft as you want on the inside. So you come across like, don't screw with me. But if you want to go cry, you go in your car, you drive away, you go in the bathroom, you don't let anyone see you. And I've had those times too, where things have just been so stressful.
Yeah, of course.
But I've made my way through life. I've been the past president of the North American Car and Truck of the Year Awards. I'm on the World Car Jury. I'm always like to be the first at something. I love to blaze the trail, because then everyone else that follows is just also ran.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's funny because I was going to say, you know, did you have any? Obviously, your dad would be a role model. I was going to say, were there any female role models?
Yeah, there was like Lynn St. James was racing, you had Janet Guthrie, there are other women. But the thing is, they had to go through their own stories, their own versions. And sometimes women in this industry, women become catty in general, not specific. I am not like that. If I find another woman who I think is the real deal, who truly is passionate, I'll help them.
Yeah,
I'm helping a couple of women right now make sure they get on some of these juries, make sure they get to the positions they want. But if you're just in it because you think it's all about recognition and I just want to be the pretty face and be an Instagram, flash in the pan, I have no time for that. I won't take you down, but I'll just ignore you. And there's a
yep,
couple of them out there that I see, and they're not going to be here long. I've had a few over the years. I mean, I'm not about the TNA. You know what I mean? If you know what
yep.
I'm saying.
I hear you.
There are some women that are, and you know what? Here's the problem: we spent all these years, well before when I was a kid, that women wanted to be strong and be independent and blah blah blah. And I've never played the female card. Even when I ran for office for North American Car and Truck of the Year, I never said, "And I'm a woman."
Yeah,
No, it's obvious. Either you want me to be the leader and show you how things can be done properly, or don't vote for me. I don't care.
yeah.
It was funny because I learned a lot from a lot of people. I've made some amazing friends that are guys that have done some great things for me. My co-host Paul Bryan has been a wonderful mentor and a good friend. He's the brother I always wanted, and I'm the sister he always wanted. So we're good friends.
That's
But
good.
I've met a lot of great people, and I've helped people out that I think have skills that don't get the opportunity, and then I watch them soar. Like Al Vasquez, he's from Cuba, came to the U.S. And he loves cars, but he's not really a car junkie. But I helped him, and he just took it to a whole new level. And he's the number one Spanish journalist in the country.
Wow.
So and he speaks English well, but he's really smart. But he does all of his content in Spanish, so we help each other now.
Yeah. No, your resume is incredible. It speaks for itself. There is no sort of like, for a woman come on, that does not apply whatsoever.
I've always ignored that when people say,
Yeah, she was the first woman. No, I mean, it's just remarkable. We do, one of our sponsors, Arch Auto, is, they're parts people. And can you kind of elaborate on the idea of parts themselves, whether it's the idea of quality parts and, sort of trying to take shortcuts and where those things lead?
absolutely. I'm actually an ASE certified technician as well as an SAE engineer. So I am definitely aware of parts, and I've put a lot of them on over my time. Plus, I used to design braking systems. So yeah, I've done a lot of hands-on, get my hands dirty. And you learn that way, boy. You make mistakes and you figure it out. As far as getting auto parts, you want quality auto parts. When they tell you good, better, best, I don't care if you're talking about flooring or car parts, you always want the best. And the reason for that is a better quality brake pad or a better quality rebuild will last longer, sometimes longer than a new part.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people don't realize. They go to the repair shop and they cut corners. Well, what's the cheapest oil? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
It's the heart of your engine. Why don't you get full synthetic oil? It'll last longer, better lubrication, less to impact to the environment is a lot of positive. And people are like, well, it costs more, but you don't have to change your oil as often. So I'm always about trying to help people make good decisions. I was involved with the Car Care Council since it started. So we have a B Car Care Wear program that every year we go out of our way. In April, it's National Car Care Month. October is Fall Car Care Month, to help people get prepared for the different seasons because of the impact of the weather, because I'm on the Weather Channel also, and car parts. So you want to make sure that whether you do it, a DIY, do it yourself, or a DIFM, do it for me, that you always ask for the best parts.
This might sound like an obvious question. Tell us where you draw the line. Do you do 100% of your own repairs? Where do you draw the line? Where do you say, no, I'm sending that out, or I don't have time for that one anymore? Is there anything is there anything you won't do at this point? There's probably nothing you can't do.
We've done a lot. Oh my God. We pulled an engine out of a Ferrari 308 to do a timing chain. That was a nightmare. But I won't do that again. That was one that was such a nightmare because the reason is it's $17,000. My father had a Ferrari 308 and he goes, we can do this ourselves. So my husband and I helped pull out this transverse mounted, which means instead of it being front to back, it was sideways. The engine mounts in the back. It's a mid-engine car. And we pulled the motor out. We replaced the parts, did all the clearances. Everything was great. Put the engine back in, and we still had a check engine light on the dash because Ferrari makes you bring the car into the dealer so they can charge you. So they get you one way or the other. So that was one where like, got that message. But a lot of the car manufacturers have basically tightened down the access to their information. And there is something going on right now. It's called the Right to Repair Act. And we're bringing it to Congress through the Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association, trying to get them to release some of this information. Because like I have a 911. So you take a Porsche and you want to work on it. Sure, I can change the oil or change the pads, but that light's still on the dash. You need to change your oil. So I had to buy a special tool that's proprietary to Porsche to get it to reset. So, but I also have a Porsche Cayenne, so I used it for the same thing. But the idea is that I don't mind oil changes, pretty much stuff. Anything that's a technical service bulletin or a recall always goes back to the dealer. No matter who you are, you don't want to be doing that yourself because it's paid for. Yeah. And you usually get a loaner. So it works.
Yeah, that's true. Some fun questions. You had mentioned you took your bike up to that used car lot to pick out that car. What was that first car?
76 Camaro in cream color with a 305 engine. It was a stone. So I had it till I turned 16, and a friend of mine came by and he goes, hey, you want to go to an autocross? I go, what's an autocross? I'm very competitive. So he's like, a bunch of pylons in a parking lot, fastest time around wins. I'm like, I'm in. Oh my God, I was so slow. So another guy was there. He says, here's the keys to my 79 Mustang Cobra manual transmission. I knew how to drive it. So my dad had showed me. And he says, go out and give it a shot. I was like 5 seconds faster. I'm like, I'm getting rid of that piece of crap. Literally, it's the only GM product I've ever owned, which I feel bad because I drive a lot of GM products. I'm actually sitting in a Ford Lightning right now, which is the electric truck. But I've been pretty much a Ford and Porsche person ever since. But I've got other German cars. But, you know, it had nothing to do with the GM. It just happened to be the car that I own. They make some great product. The new Corvette is spectacular. And my dad had a lot of Corvettes. But I got rid of the car, bought a 79 Mustang Cobra, brought it home. And the first thing I did was look for an 83 Mustang GT that had been in a wrecking yard so I could pull the drive line. And I remember calling a salvage yard. It was like in the Midwest somewhere. And I still have the receipt someplace. There was the first 83 GT that hit the salvage yard. And I go, I need the engine, the transmission, the drive shaft, and the axle. And they're going, okay, like, who's this girl?
And are you like in high school at this point still?
This would be probably high school, probably a senior in high school by then.
Wow.
So I sent him. I was working for my dad, so I made money.
I was slicing meat at a deli in Queens.
Well, my dad owned a breaker manufacturing company, and I would finish my homework as quick as I could to go down in the basement to break down brake calipers. They're all dirty and greasy, but I got paid for it. $2.30 an hour. That was a lot then. And I used to take the money and just put it away, stash it away. And when everyone was out partying in high school and whatever, not me. No, that's a set of tires. That's a set of wheels. I took out a loan on that car, that 79 Mustang, to buy a set of 3-piece Epsilon aluminum wheels. But the loan officer at the bank's like, why would you do that? I said, because I want these CompTA tires, and they're 16-inch. At the time, that was like 20-inch wheels now. So I took out the loan and paid off the loan early, but I paid for it. I used them to race because I also put slicks on them later. But
wow, amazing. Now, you ever have a dream car that you could never get your hands on? Is there a white whale out there that you're like, man, someday I'm gonna get that?
I do have one of the dream cars that I own that I love, and I didn't think I was going to get it, but I did. And that is a 2017 Ford GT. It's a supercar. Ford made. It was supposed to make 250 per year. But I was lucky to get the 27th car built. So when you wanted a Ford GT, you had to fill out an application. And they want to know, one, did you own an earlier GT, which we had? Are you a fan of Ford, which I am. I named my daughter Shelby. And I had social media, and they knew I had TV coverage. And I said, yes, I will drive this car. So I got the 27th Ford GT, and it's a supercar. And it's probably one of the prettiest cars we've ever, and the best car we ever owned. As far as other cars, well, if I had unlimited cash, which I don't see myself in this position. But you said, here's a blank check pick your vehicle. All right, it's going to be a Ferrari 250 GTO short wheelbase. That's only about 34 million. So that's really outside my price point.
Now you would have to get a loan for that. I'm assuming you wouldn't just pay cash for the 34 million.
I don't have the collateral on that one.
Wow. Is that the most expensive car out there? What's higher than a $34 million car?
There's a couple of them. I follow the Pebble Beach auctions. We go to that. We go to Amelia Island. I judge at all these car shows as well. There was one that sold for 56 million. I think it was one of Carroll Shelby's original race cars. There's a couple of them that have significant history, like Senna's car. These are famous racers, F1 racers, famous race car drivers, famous cars. Have the more province or James Bond's, original DB5. Those are going to go for stupid numbers.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can imagine. That's got to be crazy. Well, I definitely, really appreciate you making time for us here. Is there anything we should be looking out going forward? Anything that
I've got a lot of things going on. I just did a couple things on VinWiki, which is a channel that's all about exotic cars. And I told the full story of driving while pregnant. And I've also got another one. I got stuck in the desert with an alcoholic. So they partnered me with an alcoholic, and I didn't know it at the time. And then he wrecked the car. And it's a whole interesting story. I've got a lot of stories. I've been racing and doing a lot of things my whole life. My husband races cars professionally. He runs in the Trans Am series with Chris Dyson racing. My kids are into cars. So it's a car world. And my daughter married a guy who's into Porsches. So that's not too bad. So, but our whole life is cars. I'm always putting out really cool stories, good information. My goal is not just car reviews and first looks of new vehicles. I try to give people car smarts because knowledge is power.
Absolutely. That's a perfect place to end it. Thanks a bunch, Lauren.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just a reminder, folks, the podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Arch Auto Parts, your neighborhood auto parts store. If you're not sure where to find one, check out archautoparts.com for a store locator, but just look out because they're popping up all over. Probably coming to your neighborhood very soon.